The courtroom fell still as Clooney took the stand, recounting that night in haunting detail. Beneath the park was a massive underground chamber carved into shadow and silence. It was softly lit by ambient glow and filled with figures, public names, cloaked in robes, sipping from gold cups, sitting in orchestrated quiet. But one detail froze the air. There were people in there, without arms, without legs, positioned on velvet cushions like ornaments. Not humans, props. They called them nuggets, Clooney said. The word alone drew gasps from the jury box. He'd asked someone, "What is this?" and was met with a chilling smile. "Don't worry," they'd said. They volunteered, but to him it didn't feel like consent. It felt like obedience. It felt like control. He refused to enter the main room, wouldn't sign the NDA. Instead, he stayed in a glass lounge on the perimeter, sipping whiskey with a steady hand and a racing heart. He left as soon as he could, told himself it was a one-time thing. It wasn't. More invitations followed, different places, but always the same players, always orbiting one central figure, Diddy. With time, Clooney noticed the shifts. Calls stopped. Projects stalled. People he trusted began to drift. They didn't say it, he told the court, but I felt it. Saying no came with a price. Still, he stayed silent until now. In private, he began to document it all. Journals, names, dates, encounters that made no sense. Until they did. Colleagues smeared by sudden tabloid storms. Careers vanishing in a whisper. He recalled a friend once, beloved by millions, whose life fell apart after confiding in the wrong person. It was too precise to be random, he said. They knew how to erase you without even touching you. But what he said next broke the courtroom wide open. There was a night I nearly didn't walk away. It happened in 2015. The invitation arrived. No NDA this time. Just a black card with 4 words. Only the initiated. A producer he trusted urged him to go. That night, Diddy entered in all white. On either side of him, 2 silent men. And everything shifted. It felt like a test. Guests were blindfolded. Questions were asked. Those who failed were let out. I don't know where they went, Clooney said softly, but within weeks, 3 faces I knew well were gone. Just gone. He tried to leave. A man blocked him. "You're on the list," he whispered. That's when Clooney said he broke. Staying silent felt like surviving, he admitted. But it was also surrender. The image was almost too surreal to accept. George Clooney, trapped inside a ritual beneath a theme park, whispering truth into a federal courtroom. But it wasn't the climax. It was only the start. The judge leaned forward. The room leaned with him. Clooney had confirmed the unthinkable. He'd seen it all. And stayed silent for years. "I didn't want to be erased," he said. "In our world, fame isn't just power, it's oxygen, and they control the air." His voice shook the room, but he wasn't done. He recalled a night in 2017 at his remote home in Lake Como. A manila envelope had been slipped beneath his door. No stamp, no signature. Just a black wax seal pressed with the letter P inside. 6 photographs. Only one was cleared for the courtroom. It showed a stage, dim, deep underground, a red velvet cushion in the center. On it, one of the nuggets, still framed like an offering. Around the cushion, robed figures. One face Clooney recognized immediately. "I'd worked with him," he said. Someone the world admires. I can't name him here, but I gave the photo to the judge. This wasn't a story, it was evidence. He'd made copies, stored them in a vault, but he knew what the package meant. It was a message. Later that year, at a charity event, a stranger slipped him a note. "Only still watching." Another came at a movie premiere. Same words, same handwriting. Was he afraid? Yes, he said, but I feared silence more. Then came the deeper truth. This wasn't just a party, he told the jury. It was an operation, built in plain sight, protected, engineered. The entrance wasn't buried in some forest. It was beneath a place where children laughed and families lined up for popcorn. Millions passed by, never knowing. He described the layout: a maintenance corridor, a freight elevator, a descent that took nearly a minute, doors with cryptic symbols, and at the end, the circle. Inside, there were rules. No names, no speech, only ritual. But we weren't there just to participate, he said. We were there to be seen by others who were also compromised. That's how it sustained itself, not by secrecy. But exposure. You couldn't tell, he said, because they'd seen you too. That's when the courtroom changed. It wasn't about architecture anymore. It was about implication, mutual destruction as the ultimate insurance policy. Then, the ledger. At the entrance, he recalled a guest book, a thick leather-bound volume. Everyone had to sign in, he said. I didn't, but I saw the names before mine. He paused. Some of them would shatter the average American's idea of who's clean. The judge asked, was that the only book? There were more, he said. Other caves, other ledgers, but I've only seen one. Clooney's voice faltered only once. He spoke of a young actor, someone he mentored. He said no, and everything changed. His agent dropped him. Projects died. He ended up teaching theater in Oregon, not because he lacked talent, Clooney whispered, because he wouldn't shake the wrong hand. The courtroom fell dead silent. Reporters froze mid-sentence. Jurors traded uneasy glances. This wasn't about one man anymore. This was about a machine. I stayed quiet, he said, because I was terrified of what I'd become if I stayed in, but more terrified of what I'd lose if I walked away. He opened a leather folder. Inside, receipts, digital invites, handwritten notes, all dated, all connected, each one a thread in the same invisible web. But still, the question hung in the air. Why now? Why speak after all this time? He looked out toward the press cameras, voice steady, because this isn't about Diddy. He's not the disease. He's the symptom. The real sickness is silence. And with those words, everything shifted. He wasn't just testifying, he was indicting the entire system. The room paused, not for process, but for breath. For what had just been revealed, George Clooney leaned in, both hands gripping the stand, like it was the only thing keeping him steady. What I'm about to share, he said, I've never told a soul. Not my wife, not my lawyer, not even my closest friends. It was late 2019, another package arrived. No stamp, no name, just his name in cursive ink. Inside, a single flash drive, no note, no warning. He played it alone, in the dark of his Los Angeles. Study, surveillance footage. Grainy. Time stamped. No sound. The same velvet chamber. The circle. Figures entered one by one, robed, masked. They stood in formation. At the center, a single person on a cushion. Still, objectified. Then, Diddy entered. Mask. He looked straight into the camera, raised a glass, and whispered something Clooney couldn't hear. But I could feel it, he said. This wasn't a party, it was a message. He destroyed the drive, but not before copying it and bringing it under seal. They were telling him, we know you were there. We're watching. That's when he made the decision, the one he'd circled for years. I moved my children out of the country. For 6 months, I dropped out of projects. I vanished. He knew what happened to those who spoke, but silence, he said, was worse, because silence meant complicity, and complicity is how the system survives. He said the decision haunted him, faced with a choice between comfort and conscience. He chose conscience. The prosecutor leaned in. Why now? Clooney looked up. Because there's nowhere left to hide. This wasn't just one man coming. Clean, it was a fracture in the surface of an industry polished to perfection. Clooney's voice cut through the room. This case isn't about one man's fall. It's about a culture that taught us silence was survival and had the nerve to call it loyalty. He didn't flinch as he laid it bare. Hollywood, he said, doesn't just protect its own, it rewards obedience. It buries mistakes. If you fall in line, you thrive. But if you push back, you vanish. He recalled those warnings dressed up as coincidences. An actor he once worked with suddenly dropped. No calls, no roles. A director who asked too many questions, never hired again. A comedian who made one offhand joke and never stepped on stage after that. They weren't unlucky. Clooney said they were warnings, but the breaking point didn't come when it happened to him. It came when he saw what was happening to others. In 2016, during the Cannes Film Festival, a young actor, one Clooney had mentored, approached him shaking. They tried to pull me in, the actor whispered. I said no. And just like that, the call stopped. Within months, a star on the rise was teaching high school drama, all because he refused to shake a hand that wasn't meant to be seen. In public, Clooney paused. I've lived a life of privilege, fame, access, influence. But what good is any of that if I use it to protect the wrong things? Then came the realization that left the courtroom silent. This isn't a scandal, he said. It's a blueprint, one built to protect the powerful, punish the defiant, and rewrite the truth before it ever sees daylight. The prosecutor asked if he had named names. Not yet, but Clooney made a vow. If this court demands them, I'll give them. Not in open court, but in private, with evidence. The gallery stirred. Whispers flickered across the room like electricity, but Clooney didn't address the judge, not the attorneys. He turned to the cameras, to the people watching. If this is how the system works, what are we still applauding for? And for the first time, it wasn't just a courtroom listening, it was the world. As Clooney resumed his testimony, the courtroom didn't get darker in light, but in weight. Every word pulled back another layer. Every sentence was heavy with something unseen, something old, ancient, ritualistic, hidden beneath the mask of modern power. These weren't random events, he said. They were choreographed. He described one last invitation. Unlike anything before, it arrived on black cardstock, heavy, pressed in silver foil. Just 5 words. Only the initiated know. No NDA, no instructions, just a time, a place. The producer who handed it to him called it The Crossing. Clooney didn't want to go. You need to. The producer insisted. Everything's changing. So he went. What he found felt more staged than spontaneous. The mystery was gone, replaced by attention so deliberate, so orchestrated. It felt manufactured. Masked celebrities stood like statues along the walls. The perimeter lined in velvet, a perfect circle. Diddy arrived last, head to toe in white, flanked by 2 silent men with shaved heads. Then, silence. A voice echoed from somewhere above, from behind tinted glass. Mechanized, distorted, Clooney remembered every word. Begin the choosing. Blindfolded participants were led into the circle, one at a time. Questions were asked, some ridiculous, some terrifyingly personal. Those who didn't answer, removed. Led through a side door, none of them came back. Clooney stared straight ahead. I still don't know where they went, but within weeks, 3 familiar faces were gone from the spotlight. No press, no farewell posts, just gone. He tried to leave. A guard blocked him. You should stay, the man whispered. You're on the list. I wasn't afraid of them, Clooney said. I was afraid of who I'd become if I stayed. So, he stood still, nodded, played the part of the obedient guest, and then he left, and he never looked back. That night, something shifted. I realized it's not just about power, it's about proof. Proof that you belonged, that you'd comply, that you'd stay silent. And silence wasn't demanded by threats. It was bought with roles, with magazine covers, with immunity. Now the courtroom leaned in. These circles weren't isolated, he continued. They were scenes in a larger film, and everyone had a part. He named the pieces: publicists who buried scandals, producers who shuffled controversy into exile, lawyers drafting NDAs so ironclad they didn't just protect reputations, they erased them. There's a machine, Clooney said, and when you feed it loyalty, it feeds you opportunity. But if you stop, you become a liability, a whisper, a footnote. He said he never gathered evidence for revenge. He did it for protection. Notes, invitations, emails never posted, donations made through shell companies parked beside a children's theme park, photographs, logs, names he wasn't ready to say aloud. Not because I want to protect them, he said, but because the system eats the first one who breaks the code. He paused. I'm choosing to break it anyway. Suddenly his tone changed. This wasn't about what had happened anymore. It was about why he stayed silent and what that silence had cost others. He told stories of a debut album shelved days before release, of a TV segment pulled at the last second, never aired again, of a former assistant sued 3 times in 48 hours the moment she tried to go public. None of it random, all of it strategic. They don't erase you with violence, he said. They erase you with indifference, with absence, with silence. He looked at the jury. I played along too long. I nodded when I should have spoken. I let fear shape my morals, but the final blow wasn't about him. It was when he realized that his silence had enabled the damage, that his complicity had a body count, not in blood, but in spirit, in careers. In lives left behind, for every person erased, he said, there's a version of me who let it happen. This wasn't testimony anymore. It was confession and confrontation. As Clooney neared the end, the mood inside the courtroom shifted. Once more, what had begun as a recollection of one night was now a scathing dissection of a culture of silence. He spoke now directly to the world watching outside. You think Hollywood makes up these stories about secret societies? He asked. They exist for a reason, not in every detail, but in every dynamic. He described the recording booth above the chamber, hidden behind one-way glass, always occupied, someone always watching, always deciding who got to belong. That surveillance wasn't just about control, it was leverage. It was insurance. Clooney said, if you ever spoke out, there'd be footage. Maybe not of you doing anything, but of you being there. And presence was enough. He went quiet. I never participated, he said softly, but I was there, and they made sure I remembered. Then came the final piece, late 2019, just before the world shut down. A package arrived at Clooney's door, no return address, inside, a flash drive. He played it. What he saw would never leave him. Surveillance footage, the circle, the masked figures, and then Diddy. He removed the mask, stared straight into the camera, raised a glass, smiled, whispered something inaudible, but the message, Clooney said, was unmistakable. It wasn't just a recording, it was a warning, a threat, a reminder. He made copies, then destroyed the original, moved his family, withdrew from public life, because now he understood. Saying no wasn't enough. They needed you to be afraid to speak. The prosecutor asked him, do you think this testimony will cost you everything? Clooney didn't blink. I might never make another film. I might lose every deal, every friend afraid to be seen near this truth. He exhaled, but for the first time, I'll be able to breathe. Then, for the first time, he turned, looked directly at Diddy, and said steady, unshaken, you always knew this day would come. The courtroom froze. Then Clooney reached into his coat and placed something on the stand, a sealed envelope. Inside, he said, is a list. Not of crimes, not of enemies, just names. Names of those who were there. Names of those who stayed silent, some out of fear, some just by choice. He turned to the judge. If the court compels it, I'll hand it over. The judge nodded, the envelope was collected, and in that moment, everything changed. This wasn't just the Diddy trial anymore. It had become a trial of silence itself. As Clooney stepped down from the stand, the gallery didn't move. No murmurs. Press flashes, just a collective, unbroken silence. Outside, headlines were already rewriting themselves, but inside, something deeper had happened. A man once seen as the face of calm had ripped the curtain off an empire of control and named it, not as scandal, but as reckoning. And as the courtroom doors closed behind George Clooney, one truth remained. Some stories are too massive to bury, too heavy to carry alone, and finally, this one was being told.